Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the press briefing of Presidential Spokesperson Secretary Edwin Lasherda. Hi,
Good
sir.
afternoon, Marie. Good afternoon, members of the Malacanang Press Corps. It seems like it's more than the Malacanang Press Corps, so we'd like to welcome the new faces here. We are graced with the presence of the Presidential Assistant on Climate Change, Secretary Bebet Gozun. Her name is Elisea. She's more familiar as Bebet, so she will be explaining to us what Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative is, at least on the Philippine implementation of the EITI. So there's a PowerPoint presentation. Sec Bebet Gozun also brought along with her some individuals whom she will be introducing. So, Sec Bebet.
Maraming salamat, Secretary Edwin. Isang maganda at makakalikasang tanghali po sa ating lahat. Joining me here this morning are members of the multi-stakeholder group that's actually leading the implementation of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative in the Philippines. First, with me, representing government, is Assistant Commissioner Alfredo Misahon of the Bureau of Internal Revenue. He's in charge of the large taxpayers. So, importante. And then we have with us also the Director of the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines, Mr. Jerry Brimo. And we have the National Coordinator of Bantay Kita, Michelo Magno, representing civil society. But we also have other members of the our technical working group with us. We have Director Carmencita Delantar of the DBM, Ms. Febe Lim of the Department of Finance, as well as Ms. Charmaine Bacanay. In local governments, we have the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines, represented here by Pat De Quiros, and of course our Assistant Secretary from the Department of Energy, Assistant Secretary Daniel Ariaso. Okay. So to start off, what is this Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative? The reason why this came into being was that it was recognized that a lot of people, about 3.5 billion people, actually live in countries that are very rich in mineral resources as well as oil and gas, and that if these are properly developed and the revenues utilized properly, it could actually generate a large sums of money that can be used to spur economic growth as well as reduce poverty all over the world in the countries where you find this oil and gas and minerals. But to make that happen, you need to have good governance. And to ensure that there is good governance, they put together the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, which aims to strengthen governance by improving transparency and accountability. Saan? No? Specifically in what? In the payment of companies and in the collection of government. So this was launched, by the way, by Prime Minister Tony Blair in 2002 at the World Summit for Sustainable Development. That was the Rio Plus 10, if you recall. And then subsequently, countries agreed to set this up, and they agreed on the principles that would guide this, which is called the Lancaster Principles. And the first EITI International Board was then established in October of 2006. Right now, there are already 37 countries that are participating, 20 of which are already compliant and 17 are candidates. Now, what is this EITI all about? It's like the ISO. It's an international standard for transparency of revenues from natural resources. So companies must disclose and publish what they pay to government, the different arms of government, including national and local, and government naman must publish what they actually receive. You would think that if a company says, I paid 10 million, then government would have received 10 million. The truth of the matter is, this has actually not been reconciled. Nobody has actually done that matching to make sure that what is actually reported or claimed to be reported and supported by documents to show they actually paid for this actually entered the coffers of government. So the key players here are the companies who will disclose the payments and governments who will now disclose how much revenue they actually received. No? And that is put together in an EITI report. Now, why participate? For government, we see that we will benefit from following an internationally recognized transparency standard that will demonstrate our commitment to reform and anti-corruption, which is all in line with the basic social contract of our president with the people, which is really daang matuwid, no? And we hope that this will also lead to improvements to tax collection processes as well as enhance the trust and stability in the extractive industries. Alam naman natin kung gaano kasalimuot ang industries in the Philippines, especially mining with the legacy of bad mining in the past. For companies naman, they benefit from having a level playing field in which all companies are actually required to disclose the information. And then they benefit from an improved and more stable investment climate with which they can better engage the citizens and civil society in general. No? And then for the civil society and citizens as a whole, you benefit from receiving reliable information about the sector as well as having a multi-stakeholder platform where they can better hold government and companies to account. Alam natin malaking issue ang mining sa Pilipinas, no? And ang question talaga ng communities and the IPs and even the churches, may pakinabang ba talaga tayo dito? At kung meron man, magkano to, saan ba yan nagagamit? Anong concrete benefit? And we have to weigh that vis-a-vis both the social and the environmental impacts naman of the extractive industries. So, recognizing the value of having an international standard, Pinoy issued Executive Order 79, which really established the mining policy of his administration. And within that, there's a section 14, where we declare our commitment to participate in EITI. And the Executive Order also constituted the 2 cabinet clusters on economic development and climate change mitigation and adaptation into the Mining Industry Coordinating Council. So in the first meeting of the MICC, the EITI Technical Working Group was already constituted. I was asked to head this, and we are working under the cabinet cluster on good governance and anti-corruption. So it is not a project, no? It's really part of our continuing commitment to really have good governance in the country. And then, so this is the implementation structure. You have the EITI Philippines, which is a multi-stakeholder group as required by the EITI international guidelines. We report both to the MICC and to the Cabinet Cluster on Good Governance and Anti-Corruption, which, as you know, is chaired by no less than the President. And then we are supported by a technical working group. Now, how do you participate in EITI? There is a compliance process. You start off with a sign-up. You have to say that you would like to participate, and they evaluate, application pa lang, evaluate na ng international board. And if you're not accepted, you don't even move to the next phase. No? So the next phase, if you're accepted, you become an EITI candidate, and then on the basis of which you then prepare the report, which will be reconciled and validated by an international validator na accredited by the international board. So talagang solid yung data na hawak natin once that comes out. And then once we're able to publish that, then we are called EITI compliant. So nasaan tayo in the Philippines right now? We are in the first phase. Nasa candidacy, no? In the candidacy, they have 4 requirements. The first one is that government must issue an unevocable public statement of our intention to participate. We've done that with the issuance of Executive Order 79. And then the second requirement, that government must appoint a senior individual to lead the implementation. Yours truly, ho yun. And I've been designated to be the focal person for EITI implementation in the Philippines. The third requirement is a commitment to work with civil society and companies on the implementation of EITI. This is not just EITI. You know naman that the Aquino administration's way of working is really very participatory and inclusive, no? So, talagang swak tayo dun sa rule book nila that says civil society and companies must be substantially engaged in the entire process. So we've met with Bantay Kita, which is a federation of NGOs all over the country, and asked them to help us push this. We met with the Chamber of Mines of the Philippines and other large-scale mining companies that are not members of the Chamber, as well as the Petroleum Association of the Philippines for the oil and gas sector. So nag-outreach tayo, starting off with the training of trainers, and we actually had 5 regional consultations conducted in different parts of the country where mining is active. No? And then we also had a indigenous peoples in areas again where you have mining. We met with the academe as well as with the religious group. So talagang as wide as possible na stakeholders we tried to reach out. For business, we have the Chamber of Mines, the large-scale metallic mining companies that are not members of the chamber, as well as the oil and gas sector represented by their association. We also reached out to government. Kasi as you saw, may role talaga yung gobyerno to generate the report, di ba? And we didn't want to just talk like, let's say, BIR, not just Commissioner Kim Henares, no? But those who will actually be working and generating the data. So yan sila, Assistant Commissioner Misahon and his entire team. We met with the Department of Finance, Energy, NEDA, Customs, NCIP, MGB, and even the pen rolls of the DNR again, who can help naman the local governments in generating the data of payments for local governments and the Union of Local Authorities. So, na-meet na natin. At least we think na-meet natin yung requirement, the third requirement for candidacy. The fourth one is that we must have a multi-group to oversee the implementation. We started off with an interim multi-stakeholder group, 3 from government, 3 from the chamber, 3 from Bantay Kita. Then we went through this consultative process, we had meetings, and subsequently, we elected na, we chose na. Each of the sector, by the way, is free to choose sino uupo sa kanila. And government must not play any role in that particular selection process. So if somebody from the civil society is selected na hindi natin type, sorry, pero libre sila to do that. No? In fact, there was some issue raised about one group na ang advocacy nila talaga sa anti-mining, but they are part of the entire process. No? So, as we said, the final members of the multi-stakeholder group were chosen. The Chamber of Mines, of course, through their board resolution. Petroleum Association, the same. The large-scale miners, there are 14 that are not members. That's probably new to many of you, na hindi members ng chamber. They actually had an election to choose their representative as well. No? And then the civil society also had an election on January 17, their National Congress. So we have officially constituted the MSG. Ito ho yung 5 from government. We have Undersecretary Jeremiah June Paul of the Department of Finance, Assistant Secretary Daniel Ariaso of the Department of Energy kasi may oil and gas sector tayo, and then the Director of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau, and Governor Umali for the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. For the private sector, we have the following: Mr. Art Disimi, Jerry Brimo, and Adrian Ramos, representing the Chamber of Mines, and then you have Clarence Pimentel representing the non-members of the chamber, and Baste Quinones representing the Petroleum Association, so oil and gas. No? And then these are the representatives from civil society, Shelo Magno, Professor Batong Bakal. So you have Visayas, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, as well as Metro Manila. Okay. And then ito naman ho yung TWG, which will also be now multisectoral, para represented talaga lahat ng stakeholders. Okay, next. And then, so the last requirement is really that we should have a fully costed work plan with measurable targets and a timetable for implementation. So we already have this, and we were given some guidance by the EITI International Secretariat, and we finalized that work plan last March 1, and this will be our final submission as a part of our application form. Application to the EITI International Board. So ang objectives natin is to establish commitment and support, form the multi-stakeholder group, develop and publish the terms of reference for the MSG and the work plan. Importante ho itong terms of reference, no? Kasi as you see, the scope is talking about payments and revenues. So issues ng, let's say, may mga na-dislocate sa isang mining area, hindi yun covered ng EITI. That is covered by another technical working group working within the MICC. Issues, for example, on environmental impacts of some of the mining operations or oil and gas is also being tackled by the technical working group on concerns of the MICC. So, hindi natin maiiwasan in the process of consultation that different issues come up. Like the religious group, ang issues talaga nila labor, no? So, ibabato natin, like sa grupo naman nila, Secretary Dinky. Hindi naman na mawawala. It's just that we have to make sure also that klarong-klaro yung scope ng EITI. And that's why we also signed an MOU on this. No? And then, looking at institutionalizing EITI down the line, kasi nga, hindi lang ito one-time report, it will be a continuing thing, which we hope will be a commitment of the government, no? Even with the changes in administration. And then, of course, we need to prepare to implement and monitor, audit and reconcile the reports on the revenue flows, communicate, build knowledge, and engage the citizens. And then, yan, we agreed, by the way, this is something new. We've never done it before. Other countries take them more than 2 years to actually generate the report. No, hirap na hirap sila mag-reconcile ng data. So we decided we'll start with something medyo low-hanging, something we think is doable. So we're focusing on the 35 large-scale metallic. So hindi muna natin sinama ang non-metallic, hindi muna natin sinama ang small-scale mining kasi inaayos natin yon. There's another technical working group of the MICC that's working on small scale. And then oil and gas kasi iilan lang naman sila, no? And they're operating. So yun nga, na-finalize na yung TOR and the work plan. And then, okay, we hope to submit our application by tomorrow. Submit na ho natin sa International Secretariat. And we are already reviewing the legal framework to identify obstacles. For example, isang obstacle, nasa batas pala natin, bawal pala na yung binabayad ng company sa atin, i-disclose ng government. Ano, yeah, bawal pala yon. So, how will we address that without having to go to Congress for an amendment of the law? No? Simple lang. Nausip natin, we'll just put together a waiver, which industries have agreed to sign, and BIR is now drafting it. So they will now waive yung provision na yon and authorize government to disclose payments to government. Isa lang yon sa mga nakikita nating obstacles to EITI implementation, and we're working on resolving those already. And once we are declared a candidate, we have 18 months to publish our report. We will establish a PMO within the Department of Finance kasi finance talaga ito di ba? Revenues kasi. And we will draft a disclosure policy para pakita rin sa lahat ng tao the flow charting of the revenue data. We now have a website. All of this will be uploaded there as part of our transparency. And we will see the possible use of technology and application of open data, and also identify ano pang other areas for transparency and participation. No? Closely monitor, by the way, hindi pa tayo candidate man lang ha, pero talagang innovative ang Pilipino. We are the first country to have a sub-national EITI implementation. Sa Compostela Valley ho, which as we know, maraming mining that's going on there, they heard about EITI, and through the work of Bantay Kita and other local NGOs and the indigenous peoples there, and the governor, to set up an EITI already. There's one large-scale mining operating in Combal, and there are over 20,000 small-scale miners. Pero marami, may mga iba sa kanila, nasa asosasyon naman. So it is, two of the associations are already participating. And the beauty of Combal, by the way, is that all mining is within an ancestral domain, ancestral land. So key role talaga yung NCIP and the IPs themselves. And the good news is the IPs there are also willing to participate. What does that mean? The 1% royalty that they receive, they will also disclose. Kasi by the way, there's nothing in the IPRA law also that tells them they have to disclose, not even to their people, how much they're getting, di ba? So maganda to. It's a good model, hopefully, for how to address small-scale mining. So tututukan natin yan. And then secure the support, of course, from national and international partners. Upcoming milestone, as I said, the application, and then there will be an international conference of EITI in Sydney, May 23-24. We're keeping our fingers crossed that the meeting, Sec Edwin and the rest, i-announce na accepted tayo that we meet the requirements for candidacy and we are a candidate.
Thanks for Ma'am Bebet Gozun. Mimi Gonzalez of Business World.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Ma'am, so clarification lang po. We will be submitting our application to be a candidate.
Yes.
And what happens after that po?
The EITI Secretariat will review our application to see if we meet all the requirements, no? And then they will submit the recommendation to the EITI board, and hopefully the board will make a decision during the Sydney conference. Just to give you an idea kung gaano ka detalye sila mag-validate. Kasi gusto nila talagang truly participatory, no? So we've documented all the meetings that we've had. Kung sinabi natin na kinonsult natin itong NGO na to on this date nag-meeting, you know, they will call them. Kaya lahat ng contact details ng lahat ng nakausap na doon. Kasi daw, they've come across countries where actually it's government-initiated NGOs. Hindi naman talaga truly NGO. So, ganun ang level, kasi they're very concerned about it. Part of transparency kasi is talagang fully participatory, no? So, that's why they take about 1.5 to 2 months to do the validation. Our advantage is the EITI Secretariat, International Secretariat, has actually been to the Philippines 3 times. They are excited about the Philippines' participation. And they've given us some guidelines in terms of filling up the application form. That's why we're hoping na mas-shorten yung process ng.
Ma'am, yung sa Sydney, we're hoping that we will be candidates.
We will be accepted as a candidate.
Accepted as candidates. And how long does it take before we become compliant with IETI?
We're given 18 months within which to publish our first EITI report, no? Now, so the first thing there is we need to do a study on what should be in the reporting template, di ba? We're getting that already now. We're asking the different government offices, ano ba yung reports na hinihingi industries, same thing with local governments. And ang request lang sa atin ng industry, pwede bang down the line isang report na lang, di ba? So, and we agreed to do that, make it very simple, but capture the data that are needed by MGB, by Department of Finance, BIR, etc. And then, i-reconcile natin yun. In the case of other countries, sa experience nila, it takes a long while to do the reconciliation. Kasi minsan, reconciliation, pinag-uusapan billions of dollars na hindi ma-reconcile yung data, no? We don't know yet kasi we haven't done it nga. So hopefully we'll be able to reconcile the report and then come up with an EITI report. By the way, hindi ganun kadali, just to share with you, ang Indonesia has taken, they were accepted as a candidate, when nga, Sheila? 2009. 2013 na tayo. Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa makapublish ng first report nila ang Indonesia. So, baka tanggalin sila, we don't know, no? But yun nga, they were not able to meet the request. Kasi it sounds easy, no? But we don't really know until we look into the numbers. Kasi then yung accounting terms, yun daw isang problema, iba-iba yung entry.
Ma'am, last na po. How will we benefit, how will the country benefit in case we become compliant?
Well, we see value, no, to this if we are certified by an international standard to be a truly transparent and accountable country as far as the use of money from natural resources is concerned. Kasi nga, it's a given that we are rich in natural resources, but we want to make sure that we use that responsibly and also make sure that the revenue flows actually truly does benefit the people, di ba? At the end of the day, yun naman ang mahalaga that we are able use it to reduce poverty and improve the quality of life of our people. So if the image of the country at the same time, of course, as an investment area, no? And siguro, if I could, can I ask the representative from business and civil society to also answer that question in terms, anong kita nila, no? Why are they supporting this? Ano ba nakikita nilang benefit dito? So, Brimo? Jen.
Thank you very much, Secretary Gozun. From the point of view of the extractive industries, this is a wonderful opportunity for us. And in fact, we have been asking government, even during the previous administration, to consider getting the country into EITI. It benefits us for a number of reasons. First of all, it gives us a venue for divulging and publishing all of the different taxes that we pay. I mean, it is substantial. There's quite a few of them. You can actually go to the SEC and get our annual reports if you want, or our financial reports. But there is no venue or process for the industry as a whole to be able to say how much and divulge how much we've paid. So that is very much to our benefit. It's great that government, on the other hand, will recognize that they in turn the various amounts that we've paid. I mean, this goes to various government agencies. It's not only the BIR. And thirdly, it's a wonderful opportunity as well for us to engage with members of civil society. They are involved in this process, and we think that as we go through this process, there will be a more better understanding of extractive industries and how we work and what taxes do we pay. So we are very supportive of this. We are delighted that government is finally moving ahead to join the EITI. We're extremely pleased that Secretary Gozun has spearheaded this, and I think we're going to do this very quickly. As she mentioned, in some countries, it takes a number of years to get this up and running. I don't think we will experience that here, and we're fully committed, and we're delighted that this is happening. So, yeah.
Bantakita has been advocating EITI since 2009, and we're delighted to say that this is the only issue where the CSO industry agrees on. And right. And we're talking about another issue a while ago, and there will be a second issue, but we'll talk about it in the next Congress. But for the civil society, what we're saying is that we recognize communities who say no or yes to mining. And in the Philippines, we have 35 operating mining sites. And from these operating mining sites, we have to make sure that communities benefit from extractive. And the whole country also benefit from mining. And we can do that through the EITI process, holding the industry accountable and also government accountable, because the government is our representative in getting the fair share from the extraction of the industry. But aside from disclosure of tax payments, EITI can also be a mechanism in accessing information from the government. So we're truly supportive in pushing for the membership of the Philippines in EITI. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead,
Any more
please.
questions? Mimi? Paul Atienza of Tribune.
Yes, Secretary, good
Hi,
afternoon.
Paul.
Yeah. Maybe, who among you have, or were you able to visit the Surigao, Agusan, Compostela, and Palawan? Southern Palawan specifically? The situation in Agusan, Surigao, on that part of Mindanao, where there are minings, were you able to visit that?
Ako personally, I've been there. Not recently though in Agusan, no? More recent yung Palawan trip ko. But I've gone through mining areas in the country. That was part of also the work that we were doing way back when I was Secretary of the DNR in 2002-2004, when we put together the Mineral Action Plan.
Well, it's good that we have this, but maybe how do you operate? Where do you get your budget for this?
Okay. Since this is a commitment of government, it's largely funded by government. No? So it's actually government of the Philippines that's funding EITI work in the Philippines, except that there are certain expenditures kasi that's not allowed by COA. When we did a regional consultation, we have community groups and civil society who cannot afford to attend consultation. So somebody has to cover their travel and accommodations. Bawal kasi yun sa COA. So we actually sought support from OSAID and the British Council, British Embassy, and they supported us. No? To be perfectly honest nga, as soon as we put together the work plan and we knew we had a budget till the time we were able to submit the candidacy, which was over 5 million, I went around, I talked to World Bank, British Embassy, and OSAID to get support. And they all said yes. No? They're more than willing to support us. So I was very happy to report to Secretary Butch Abad na, Butch, susuportahan nila tayo. Alam niyo ang sagot sa akin ni Butch, huwag ka humingi ng pera. Priority natin to, puponduhan natin to. I mean, just to show you the commitment of government. So talagang bulk of the expenses to bring us to where we are was funded by government. And then we realized na may COA requirements pala. So there was that constraint. So we had to go back to and use the support just to cover the civil society expenditure.
One thing that I noticed from what you have presented, the natural gas operation in Malampaya was not mentioned. Why is it?
Kasama ho sila sa oil and gas. In fact, the single biggest one is really Malampaya. Baste Quiñones comes from Shell, comes from that operation. He's the representative of the Petroleum Association of the Philippines. Sila yung upstream, di ba? So we have the Shell, Petron, sila yung Petroleum Institute. Yung Petroleum Association naman, sila yung upstream, the producers.
I had asked sometime, I think January or February, Secretary Lasherda about the service contracts of this Malampaya, and of course on taxes of this, because the government, since the Aquino administration has assumed office, has not reported on how big the tax being paid by operator of Malampaya natural gas. Now, there is a problem on mining law. As you said, that there is a prohibition or no on the law that tells to be transparent on how much tax that had been paid. And there is also a problem on these companies because they are foreign-based. They are not Manila-based because they have a mother country, and that is a conflict of law. So how can we do that to see how much tax, how can we oblige them to tell the truth on how much tax they had paid in the Philippines when in fact they have to report first to the mother country, the foreign, British or US or Germany, before Manila?
Well, to me, all companies that operate in the Philippines are bound by government laws. and rules and regulation. And since we require them to report that, they must report. It's as simple as that. I want to clarify that the limitation that I mentioned in terms of disclosure is not in the mining law. It's actually the Internal Revenue Code. Nasa Internal Revenue Code natin yon. So it's not just mining. It's actually any payments of government. Hindi pwede i-disclose ng gobyerno. But yun nga, pwede lang if the companies themselves will waive. The companies naman, in this case, the oil and gas and the large-scale metallic minings are willing to sign the waiver. And then on the oil and gas, I don't know if ASEC would like to respond to that. But klaro kasi yung payments then and reports ng oil and gas operating companies, no. In fact, since that's really a production, that's really a sharing. There's actually an audit that's being done by the Department of Energy on the expenditures of these companies. Kasi after all of those allowable expenditures are deducted, saka tayo kumukuha ng share natin. So it's actually transparent. And of course, once we have the EITI report, it will be available to everybody, no? By the way, it's not a matter of churning out a report na ang dami-daming numbers, di ba? Kasi kung hindi naman maintindihan ng tao, that's still not being transparent and accountable. We will publish the full report. But at the same time, we will be putting out a parang popular version, some sort of an executive summary, which will be in 5 of our languages. So from Ilocano, Bicolano, Bisaya, Tagalog, and English. And English. So yun yung 5 reports natin.
Last, Secretary, kasi wala tayong specifically dun sa Malampaya, hindi nga natin alam kung ilang barrel bang nasisip-sip doon na natural gas sa isang araw. Eh kung sabihin lang nung operator, 1,000 barrels lang kami per day, eh hindi naman pala ganon. Kasi wala naman tayong representative mismo doon sa drilling sa oil rig. Is that not a valid question from the NGOs? Do we have a representative there?
Yes, that's true. But those are the things that we're going to discover by undergoing the EITI process. It's EITI process, not just reconciling how much money we're getting from the industry and how much money they're paying the government. We're going to look at the whole process and identify gaps. And these gaps can be resolved by identifying policy reform. So it's not just a matter of reconciling, but also identifying potential policy reforms to fix the industry. So if that's a concern, then it's something that we will discover in the EITI process.
Kasi at the end of the day, the payment is based on something, di ba? So you have to really look at production data. You have to look at sales data, sales local and exports, di ba? So lahat yun, hihimayin natin. That's gonna be part of the EITI report. Kasi isang tanong nga yan ng mga NGOs So okay, they disclose ito yung binayad nila and they have documents to show that, may audited. By the way, the reports have to be audited, no? Pero yung ba yung dapat nilang binayad? We don't know. That's why you have to look at all of this basis for the payment. Hindi lang yun. We have to take a look at the contracts. Yun yung issue. Hindi requirement pa to ng EITI, no? But ito yung direction na tinitignan. We're reviewing already, are there legal impediments to actually disclosing the contract itself? Or maybe portions of the contract that are relevant to what we're doing. Kasi syempre yung trade secrets nila, dapat naman, hindi natin i-divulge yun, di ba? Pero those that are pertinent to the work that we're doing in EITI, we think there should be no problem. But that's work that we will be doing in this next phase once we are a candidate. Pero ginagawa na natin ngayon. By the way, I just also want to make it clear to everybody that as far as the government is concerned, kahit hindi tayo matanggap sa candidate, we will proceed with the work. Kasi we need to do this for our country. We owe it to our people to be accountable to them, di ba? And to be as transparent. Ito nga yung, matuwid na daan, di ba? And this is being true to that in terms of this particular sector.
Thank you po. Raymond Tinasaw, Bombo Radio.
Good afternoon, Secretary. I just want to point out, please clarify me. So how are you operating your structure? Are you acting as a quasi-judicial organization wherein you can actually summon, actually subpoena documents from the companies? No.
No. Really just putting, the EITI Philippines is really just working on making sure that we are able to implement this, no? In terms of all regulations, That's going to be done. In terms of the oil and gas, it will be DOE. In terms of mining companies, it will be the Mines and Geosciences Bureau. That was already raised in the national consultation we had last January, where people were saying that maybe, EITI should penalize. No, EITI cannot penalize. It will now be DNR, MGB, or DOE that will do that.
Also, I'm just wondering, as mentioned by surveys, the church is one of the trusted institutions in the country. And it's not being mentioned here as member or no representative from the church, even the Muslim group, the ulama, and which is should be competent and trusted group.
Okay. Maybe Shelo is in a better position to respond to that. Pero kasi, and just in general, in the process of the consultation, we opened up to everybody. So talagang may mga religious groups din tayong mga IPs, may Muslims, etc. But then they had their own process of electing who will sit. So, Shelo, you can elaborate.
Katulad po ng sinabi ni Secretary Gozun, we have 5 consultations. Pantay Kita is composed of 50, at least 50 organizations from all over the country. We have members from the Muslim Mindanao communities, and we have members from social action centers of the church. And we've talked to the members of the church also. So we had a process, we defined a criteria on how we're going to select the representatives in the EITI. And we use those criteria in identifying the individuals. In fact, we didn't even have an election on how we're going to select. It's a consensus building process. So imagine a whole plenary of individuals in our national conference. That's how we identify the representatives.
And Secretary, last point. How are you treating those corporations which are having or facing outstanding, for example, Shell, smuggling case or the intentional misdeclaration? So how are you treating those being member?
The proper body to address those particular concerns will be the Department of Energy, again. So, ang sa atin is really just going to focus on taking a look at what they say they're paying. Is that what they're supposed to pay? And then, of course, taking a look naman at nare-reconcile ba yun vis-a-vis what they're paying government. It is not covered by our work. Specifically, within the MICC, we have the Technical Working Group on Economic Concerns, which is chaired by DTI. So all economic issues, sila yung mag-attend to that. So if we receive anything, ibabato namin sa kanila.
George Carino of ABS-CBN.
Secretary, the intention is noble, probably not far, if not similar, to the intention of the initiatives, to be the done initiatives of the Aquino administration, which were blocked before the Supreme Court. Do you have contingencies just in case someone gets to file something before the Supreme Court to hinder this?
Then if somebody does, then of course we'll fight it out in the Supreme Court, But as of now, we really do not see because the companies themselves are willing to disclose. As they said nga, gusto nga nila ito. Kasi ang dami nilang natatanggap na banat, di ba? Nagbabayad o hindi sila nagbabayad ng enough. This is a venue for them to actually say how much they're paying. On the one hand, we also have civil society. Precisely. Ito lang naman in that sense yung key players. And part of civil society is the church and other groups who have taken a stand, for example, on being anti-mining. But even those that are anti-mining would still like to know how much is mining actually contributing. But if it should happen, then we will fight it out in the courts.
Rema Peña-Flor.
Hi, ma'am. So, ma'am, may we know how much would the government be spending for EITI?
Okay. For the budget itself, the full budget, okay, pakiha, 10, 10 million. For the full budget to bring us, for the next 2 years, This is for the next 2 years, to bring us hopefully to compliance. The government of the Philippines will spend about 10 million. Yung work plan kasi, each of those may costing, Kasi yun ang hinihingi din nila. Kasi, unless it's fully costed, you're not sure it's gonna happen, di ba? So, requirement yun ng EITI, International Board, that may costing.
And where would the budget be from?
Well, for this year, since hindi naman tayo nakabudget talaga, we're working it out with DBM on where we can source this. But hopefully, well, as we prepare the budget for 2014, papasok na natin ito.
Meron po bang timeline na ibinigay ang EITI on after being named as a candidate on when we would be able to publish our report?
We must publish the report within 18 months. As far as we're concerned, the sooner we're able to publish the report, the better, di ba? Para andyan na. And then we go into the second cycle, which would be the second report already. Yun ang ano nila. The rule book says you have a maximum of 18 months within which to publish a report, which is already reconciled, meaning clear na, no, nung kanilang international validator. By the way, the cost of doing the validation is going to be shouldered by government.
So, ma'am, we expect na we would be able to accomplish the publishing of this report in this given timeline.
We will do our best. With the cooperation of everyone, we think we can do it. Sa totoo lang, we don't really know how difficult it would be kasi nga we've never done it yet. Once we actually get the numbers, we'll see if the numbers match or not. By the way, kasi hindi lang ito national government ha, yung binabayad nila sa local. Kasama yun sa data na i-report din natin.
AC Nichols of Solar News.
Ma'am, just to clarify, will the initiative require all mining or oil companies to participate or only those who are willing to sign the waiver that you were talking about a while ago?
No, they're all required.
And all have expressed willingness to sign the waiver po?
Yes.
Any more questions?
As I mentioned earlier kasi, di ba, none of them can operate without government approval. And if government says ito yung rules natin, ito yung guidelines natin, they must comply. Pero the good news is, hindi lang they must comply, they're actually very willing to comply. Yeah, si Jerry.
Actually, just to clarify that point, we do not have to be required to divulge this. We very much want to divulge this. That information is already available in our financial statements. If you're a corporation, you are obliged to file financial statements with the SEC, and I think the general public, I think, is entitled to go there and get them if they want. No, so that information is already there, but through this process, it becomes more widely available. And at the same time, it engages government as well. It's a two-way process, right? What we pay and what they've received. There's no need for us to be required. I think I've also mentioned that as far back as 2005, we had already requested the previous administration to get the country moving towards EITI. So I just thought I'd clarify that point. Thank you.
Last
Ang
question.
isang
from
advantage ito is that information will now be available in a comprehensible manner and accessible, no? And as I said, gagawa tayo ng parang easy to understand. Para kasi otherwise din di ba? Then if you just give us a lot of numbers that don't really mean anything. We have to be very, very clear sino yung audience natin and what is that information we want them to get from the report.
Mimi?
Ma'am, as it is now, yung information, they're available but not compiled in one place. Is that right? Is that what we want to correct?
Yeah. Compile and then assess, no? Kasi nga, wala pang reconciliation at all that's been done if what's reported as paid actually does enter the coffers of government. And then also, we want to disaggregate, no? Disaggregate the data, by the way. Kasi pag disaggregated data, mas madali ka mag-validate, no? Along those lines, isa yun sa nakita natin we will need to correct, no? I understand from Commissioner Misahon, yung tax payments kasi natin for certain metals are actually lumped under one tax code. So, hindi mo ma-disaggregate how much of that is for copper, nickel, or whatever. So, for the first report, we won't be able to do that. But that's just an administrative order of the BIR, and they're willing to amend and create new tax codes para ngayon every metal will now have its own tax code para madali nating ma-match.
Oria Kalika of the Philippine Star.
I have a question for the man from
Jerry Brimo from the chamber, from the industry.
Sir, will this help you avoid paying, for example, bribes or other?
Do you honestly want me to answer that?
Yeah, of course. Because we have heard a lot of problems regarding local governments asking for some payoffs for you to be able to operate. And that has been a major problem mentioned by investors. It's not
Yeah,
as
I understand-
it's not
I
as if
understand
I'm
I understand what you're
divulging a
saying.
secret here.
Okay. I think the best way to answer that is whether or not that happens, it is irrelevant to the payment of taxes that we legally have to pay and to the EITI process. It's irrelevant. There are tax laws, there are taxes that we have to pay by law, there are fees that we have to pay by law, and whether or not that is happening, we still have to pay that. So,
Can you just give us an update on the new policies imposed by the administration and how is it going, and how are your operations now? Have things changed since this administration came in?
I think we should just simply stick to EITI, which is, I think, why we're here. Am I right, Secretary Lacerda? Yeah, so we'll just stick to the topic at hand, which is EITI taxes. And,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Secretary. Thank you.
No, I'm sorry, Secretary Gozun has opened my mind a bit.
Yeah, but
Or
there's
transparency.
nothing, I don't see any controversial, anything controversial in that question.
No, you're right. It's just that we're here to talk about EITI, and I thought we should stick to it. But since you've asked that question, we are moving forward.
Since you're here,
with-
sir.
Well, I'm here to answer regarding EITI, no? We're moving forward with government to get the new policies of the Aquino administration in place. Certainly in the issue of taxes, it's already happening, and EITI is one of them. We're going to move very quickly on this, and the industry will be very much engaged in doing what it has to do, and in engaging government to get all of these policies ironed out and implemented and effective, so that we can all move forward. Is that an okay answer for you?
So are things going slow or fast for
No,
you?
things are going very fast.
Okay.
I mean, it took Indonesia how many years to?
2009.
Yeah, we're going to beat the record for a country getting accredited as an EITI country with the cooperation of the industry, government, and civil society. We will do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kung wala na pong katanungan, maraming salamat to all of you for coming. And we hope to engage you in the future as we proceed with the implementation. Because we do want to make sure that everybody is well informed of exactly what's happening. So definitely we will not see you 18 months after we become a candidate. That's the plan. We would like to engage with you as often as possible. And do feel free to get in touch with us. Yan ho yung ating contact details. And we will also inform you through the office of Secretary Lacerda on the website para ma-access ninyo. And we will have a chat room there so that you can also ask questions. Tulungan nyo rin kami that more people truly understand this, no? So that it will also facilitate the implementation. Maraming salamat muli.